Welcome, everyone. I am Bill Torbert, and this is the first of a series of webinars about my memoir, Numbskull. My primary intent in writing this memoir was originally to see if I could become clearer about the largest patterns governing my life, to share it with you and others. Let me introduce my co-conspirators today. My dear friends and colleagues, Elaine Herdman-Barker of the Global Leadership Associates, and the irrepressible Chuck Pallas of the Center for Creative Leadership, and also Sarah Audsley, who is our technical director. For those who've never heard of Action Inquiry before, let's just take a brief minute to put up one overhead here. Here you see the idea of personal development or leadership development. These are incredibly succinct, but the idea is that we can go through life from the bottom vertically toward the top. As we go through the different chapters of the book, we are going to touch on these different, what we call action logics. And we're starting today with the opportunist, which is often associated with younger children between 5 and 10, although, as you will see from Elaine's comments and our further conversation, these action logics still play out in our lives every day. To give a feel for an action logic, I'll just read one of the short stories in chapter 1. So this occasion occurred in 1953 when I was 9 years old in Salzburg, Austria. My father was in the Foreign Service, and by this time I'm riding my bike anywhere and everywhere, and here is the incident. Now it is a cloudy, raw November day. I am riding my bicycle through the puddled back ways, returning home from the Army PX store with a brand new first baseman's glove I have just successfully stolen. My heart is still pounding from the calculated risk I have successfully taken. My eyes are feasting with delight on my treasure, and something within me knows I've done wrong, but I can feel no shame because I got away with it. Suddenly, in the midst of my daydreaming, I am struck in the back by a large rock and sent sprawling from my bike into the mud. As I turn around, I catch a glimpse of a small Austrian boy in the scant, shiny black shorts common among the poor, disappearing behind the house. Anger rises in me, but is suspended suddenly as I glimpse the familiar communist propaganda slogan painted on the cement wall of the path. Pest ami, go home. Ami was short for American. I experience my chubbiness, my new jeans, my bicycle, and my stolen glove anew, perhaps as that thin Austrian boy experienced the tableau. And now I do feel shame. Momentarily, illusionless, I pick myself up and ride the rest of the way home more slowly, confusedly conscience-stricken and reflective, to no immediate end. So Elaine, I'd like to turn to you and invite you to share some of your thoughts.
Thanks, Bill. So I love the idea that your memoirs, or whether we call it your autobiography, is about the long story of our lives and how that long story of life also brings in the action logics. The action logics, we don't just, I believe, leave them behind, but we are integrating and they are at play as we go through life. And it's that at play bit that I want to concentrate on, because the story that you mentioned about the young boy on his bike and being the opportunistic thief, and then later on meeting the opportunistic stone thrower, they were both the protagonists. And those protagonists are met by the experience of another who experiences the rock being thrown at them. And if I was to take that story and leapfrog into current times, I was part of a leadership forum where we were discussing the opportunist action logic in organizations. And as is common with these types of discussions, people were using words such as manipulative, exploitative, selfish, narrow focus, and they were relating it also to politics. And although it was an engaged and passionate conversation, there was a sense that we weren't really unearthing the different sides of opportunism in ourselves. I grabbed this poor participant who was leaving, who had spoken passionately about their experience with opportunists in groups, and asked them to say a bit more about their experience. And, well, they didn't. They moved to the other side of the room and they didn't say a thing. And then they started to, I can describe it as prowl around the room, watching me intently. And at no stage did I feel in any danger or menace, but I did feel that they had a very different agenda. They were waiting to undermine, score a strike in some form, to belittle something I would say. There was a strong sense of otherness. And the effect it had on me was to go into what I would understand to be an element of opportunism, is that I became self-protective. So I was guarding myself in some way. I was watching them, their actions, purely focused on their actions. And so Bill's story and my experience both had this powerful sense of the other. There was the other that wanted to win the game, to set out to succeed. And then there was the other who really perhaps didn't want to be part of this game at all and was self-protecting. And it's left me ever more intrigued about how the adversarial position plays out in leadership in organizations and the effect it has.
Okay, so Elaine, that was really great, and it made me think of those times in a classroom. I'm sure other people that facilitate know that experience of all of a sudden feeling like maybe you're being hunted and looking into the room and seeing the eyes of the otherness there and having to sort of rise up a little bit and take care of that situation. So I really resonated with that. So my own numbskull experience is one of the few really vivid memories of my childhood blur of bikes, playing the streets and exploring the woods with friends. We were about 12 or so. For several years, we'd been playing in a 300-acre forest called Stackhouse Park in the middle of our mountainous suburbs in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, in the middle of the state. In the woods above the creek in Stackhouse Park, we discovered something really cool to a bunch of 12-year-old boys. An enormously deep shaft in the earth. Aha. We called it the air shaft. Best of all, this concrete air shaft was abandoned and in a state of decay, such that we could scurry up a fallen tree and get on top of the raised ring of the concrete opening. And now standing on top of this round wall, which I think was about 10 feet in elevation, it was only because there was decay that we were able to sort of get on top of it. We peered down into the giant mouth through a coarse grate of rusty steel bars. It was at least 10 feet in diameter. Okay, got that? Pretty wild thing here. It was seemingly bottomless, utterly black. It was a hole descending into nothingness. So what did we do now? And looking back, I now see this episode as my first distinct collaborative developmental action inquiry. What would you do if you were little boys staring down this black hole? Well, we shouted down it. Let's see, we dared each other to stand in the middle of it. I don't think I ever did. The rusty bars were suspended above the blackness. To this day, I believe we did the right thing. And actually, unlike Bill, I've never had a moment of regret. We went home. We came back with a big glass soda bottle filled with gasoline and a rag in it. Of course, I lit it, I dropped it, and the flaming bottle of gasoline went down into the darkness where it exploded and lit up the bottom of the shaft about 100 yards down where there was a stream and some rocks. It was built after a coal mining accident in 1902 in which 112 miners died. We were never told about the mine accident under our neighborhood or even that there were mines. I've come to really feel a deep spiritual connection to these miners who literally died to help build the company who supported my happy childhood. And I like to think that the flaming bottle was an act of communication in which I am only now hearing the replies. I've never regretted for a moment dropping the bottle, and I could see the later adventures and action logics in my life stemming out from that moment.
We're coming to the end of this session. I hope it has been interesting enough and meaningful enough to many of you to rejoin us in one of the next 6, at the end of which we will have gotten up to leadership and the stages of organization development. But next time, we will be looking at diplomat and expert. Thank you so much, Elaine and Chuck, and I'm looking forward to having 2 others of my Action Inquiry friends join me at each of the forthcoming occasions. Take care, everybody.